Hey there, everybody. My name is Gregory Ellwood. I am the editor emeritus and co-founder of HitFix.com, and I am so excited today to be talking to one of the greatest actors, actually, of our time. I don't know if he'll take that sort of humbly or not, but he should. Please welcome a four-time SAG Award nominee and also an Oscar nominee for Milk, Mr. Josh Brolin.
You guys look so cozy.
These are very nice couches.
There are really nice couches.
Very envious. So we're going to talk about a little bit about your career. We're going to talk about some of your more prominent roles that you've done in the past, and we're going to sort of end up.
By the way, I want to interrupt for a second because you wrote something recently that, like as an actor, you always hope that, you hear things written in this and that, and you realize that they have an editor and they have to write certain things. But he wrote something recently that was one of the nicest things I've ever seen, and it confused me. It was sent to me, and I read it, and I go, who wrote this? My God, So I thank you very much for that, and I owe you for the rest of my life. Kissing as far as I will go, but...
Hey, that's okay. And what I wrote about is the film that we're going to talk about at the end, which is, you guys saw two clips from, which is Josh's performance in Inherent Vice, where it is clearly one of the best performances of your career, and an amazing movie by Paul Thomas Anderson, which, has anyone seen it here yet? Anybody had a chance? But when you see it, it's just a fantastic film, and for anyone who's lived in LA for a long time, it's quite an LA story in many ways. But want to start off talking about your early career a little bit, and many of your fans know that they know that your first film was like The Goonies, but I'm curious. I've read that in many ways you were sort of sheltered your whole life. You'll be 80 years old, and people will be cheering for The Goonies.
Literally. That's not a joke. That's literal. Yeah.
But I'd read that you were actually, your dad was a well-known actor, but that in many ways you were sheltered sort of from his career. Is that true, or did you sort of?
There's a funny sensitivity I'm going through right now, and it has to do with that. Becoming an actor, obviously, you all know that it's tough enough, and you're going through all the rejection and this, and people will never understand that, by the way, other than other actors, and that's why we all hang out together, and that's why we're the bubble that we are, which is so weird and sounds pretentious and all that kind of stuff, but you can't help it, because nobody will ever understand. And then you have an actor dad on top of it who was a TV guy, and then I remember when he wasn't working, when he did work, and then he had a show that hit, but he wasn't being paid crap back then, because not until Peter Falk finally said, I'm sorry, I'm sick. I can't come to work, and then that broke that door open, and then he went from $11,000 to $175,000 a week or whatever it was. Thank God for Peter Falk. But I'll always have that, and you think it's going to go away eventually. It's like, well, your dad is an actor, so of course you became an actor, or how did he help you become an actor? And you don't realize, and not even to defend it, but you don't realize that there's people, like I came into a casting lady, and she said, oh yeah, your dad's James Brolin, isn't he? I said, yes, yeah. And she goes, and you want to be an actor? And I said, oh yeah, I do very much, yes. And she said, okay, well, act. And I was like, do you have, I got a couple monologues that I can do. And she goes, thanks for coming in. And she wouldn't see me for 10 years. And I was like, that's that mentality of, and it's more widespread than you would think, of we're not going to do. So the whole actor thing in itself is just a weird thing. It's just like, you're successful, you're not successful, it's just judgment, judgment, judgment. So for me being here today, just to start it off, and not on like a morbid tone, but I get it, man. I get it. And it is a special thing, ultimately, that you get to do. But it's tough. It's a really bizarre, a lot of rejection and all that. Yeah.
Did you feel you were getting rejected because, of your father, or did you feel your last name?
Not because of my father, no, but because of the perception of nepotism. And nepotism is actually quite the opposite, because you have to prove yourself that much more, because there are those people that have, okay, let's see, let's see if you deserve it or not. And I think for me, it was incentive for me. I liked that. I liked the incentive to go forward. So the more rejection that I got, I think, which is not very much, but I was on probably 300 interviews before the Goonies, and I was told, you should probably find a new profession. You should probably, you're green, you're all this kind of stuff. And it wasn't, and then I got the Goonies, man. Like your first thing, you're supposed to get like, Happy Days or something. And then there's that whole thing where you think that's how movies are made, and then I did Thrashing and shit like that, So it's a different deal. But, you never know, just the trajectory. Yeah.
But what was the spark? Was it something you did in high school? Was it?
No, yeah, it was an improv class. I loved improv, or I liked it because of that. The idea, which was very different than anything that I knew. I didn't spend a lot of time on the set. I was up on a ranch and all that, with my mom mostly, and I had like a it was like underwater basket weaving or acting, and I took the acting thing, and then I got up on stage, and she was like, create a character, and doesn't matter what age or what, create a voice around the character. She was just talking about character stuff, and she said, now get up, and we're going to ask you questions, and you answer as the character. And people were laughing, and that was it, So unlike my dad, who had gotten into acting in a really indirect way because he wanted to direct, and somebody said, you should act because that would be the better way into directing. For me, I had no interest in it whatsoever, none, because I think my father did it. And then I took that improv class, and forget it, it was done.
So you have these 300 interviews, you get Goonies, it's this big hit. Did you realize did you think that, oh, this is it, this is going to jumpstart my career, I'm going to have big movie after big movie, or did you feel like, nope, I know enough from seeing what my dad went through that this is going to be a struggle?
No, because I didn't see what he went through, because I saw nothing, and then I saw the doctor dude, and it was big. But he was away, so I didn't see it. I didn't see the reaction. He'd come up to the country. We lived out in the middle of nowhere, so I didn't see the reaction. So I did Goonies, and then there was this massive poster on in Burbank, and that was just like I think I literally got out of my car and stood there like that because it was really weird, And then I got Thrashing purely because of that poster. I didn't get it because purely because you have value, you have a small movie being done, and therefore if you have somebody who's on a poster, then you can get it financed, and which you can tell in the acting.
Well, that was my follow-up to our one sort of stop at Thrashing is I'd heard that you almost decided to quit after that. Is that true?
No, I did. I saw the movie. I was so bad, dude. I mean, I'm better now. Now I have enough space from it that I can go, oh, you're a kid, and, you had no voice control, and when you say Chrissy, it's really high. Chrissy, no! And you're like, oh my God, I suck. And then you have that moment where you go, I'm gonna, like that decision, that crossroads of like, I'm gonna do something else, because I know I can do something else. I always had an intuitive feeling that I could make money somehow. But then I went to New York, and I became the idea of becoming an actor, which I realized was a fallacy also.
But you did work, and you did stage work while you were in New York, or you did stage work up in Rochester, I believe. I mean, was that your learning experience? Was that where you feel like you really sort of learned the foundation of being an actor?
Yes and no. I was very, very lucky. I actually got a job on a series called Young Riders. It was a Western series, and I worked with an amazing human being, the most amazing human being I know, Anthony Zerbe. And he's the most inspired human being I've ever met in my life. And I've been around a lot of pretty great people, and Howard Zinn and all these amazing people. But Anthony Zerbe's the greatest, person I know, and he's an amazing actor too, a great Shakespearean actor, a great actor, period. He was in like Omega Man, he was in Cool Hand Luke, and he's an amazing guy. But anyway, when I was doing that, a lot of guys from that show would go and do a movie during hiatus. And I was jealous of that because I thought that's what you probably should be doing to kind of build that resume and hopefully get that one part that's going to work. And Zerbe, I don't know why, saw something in me and said, why don't you come to me to Rochester, New York? I just did a play there. I think we can get 2 slots, and we'll both kind of put it together. We'll do 1 slot of a classic play, and then we'll do 3 new plays in rotating rep. And let's do that. And I did 2 plays every year for I think 4 years, maybe 5 years, but 4 years. And so I did 2 plays, and I did a lot of acting up there. And yeah.
Was that a confidence? Do you feel like you gained at least more confidence by doing all that?
I was put in a position of somebody saw the fact that I was possibly better at character than I was at other stuff. I didn't understand the whole leading man mentality or what that was, or I didn't have a lot of comfort in my own personality to go, oh, I can rely on that. So I liked the whole, I just naturally, it just was because it was. And then this whole, which I understand now, this whole Lon Chaney interest of prosthetics and character and this and that, and I get it. And I am freed in that, and I understand, I feel liberated within that. Probably just to cover it up, or I could blame it on something else. But Rochester was also another great thing about Rochester was I failed miserably. I remember my first professional play, I was playing Forgiving Typhoid Mary. I was playing an Irish priest, and I had an 8-page monologue, and I went out opening night, and there were 750 people, and I came out by myself with Barry Hockwald with a really ambient light on her, and there was a spotlight on me, and I got up with probably a really bad Irish accent and a cassock on, and I was like, well, Mary, she's, she's feeding people the wrong food. And I'm going through this thing, and I take off my glasses to break the chain of thought, and I clean off the glasses, and I put on the glasses, and I look up, and man, it was gone. I mean, it was gone. And then you see the eyebrows, the one thing you can see. You can't see anybody's face, but you see eyebrows go. And you're done. And now, confidence, you have enough confidence if you've done enough plays or whatever, to kind of improvise and kind of bring it around. But I had remembered first readings of first scripts that I had read of the play a year and a half before that weren't no longer in the play, but for some reason they were popping into my head, totally random. Mary rode a tricycle when she was 4, and but no, I went back and I left the stage because they went manual. The people, the stage manager goes, he's off, he's way off. Go totally manual, no manual. And so I spoke whatever I could, and then I left, and the light stayed on for about 4 seconds, and then went like that. And I went backstage, and the stagehands were sitting there like that. So that just confirmed the fact that I had completely, miserably screwed up the whole thing. And then Zerbe came back, and he said the perfect thing. He goes, nobody knows, man. I go, bullshit. And he goes, nobody knows. You're a writer, too. Wow, that's amazing. And go back out there. And I did. So it's stuff like that. So I've failed in every possible way you can. So,
But those experiences only, it's a cliche, but they helped you grow. They helped you gain confidence to go back out and do it again, right?
No, for sure. For sure. Well, you'll either quit or you don't. You either quit. That's the whole point of telling the story. It's not like the me game.
Right.
But it's that's the whole thing. And my kids have gotten it because, all I know is persistence. And they know that too. And, you don't see that a lot in youth today is persistence, They get sidetracked a lot. And this is not working. I don't know what I want to do, and I don't want to, which is understandable. I think that's part of youth. But I also believe that rejection is a very sensitive thing, but there is something about just banging away with the knowledge that it may never happen, and that's okay. Banging away is the point.
So When would you say in your career, if we look at from a bird's eye view, we'd see Goonies, we'd see Young Writers, we'd see Flirting with Disaster, and then, maybe American Gangster, things start happening sort of around then. In your own mind, do you see moments like fighting, got this, yes, like more fuel to keep fighting and to keep getting parts and to keep furthering the career? Do you see that when you look back over your own career?
Do I see myself putting myself in that position where...
Or the moments where you got something that made you think, yes, keep going, keep fighting?
Yeah, but there was the fight was always. There was never a moment of like, oh, this might be it. There might be that. I got that a lot from other people. Dude, it's right around the corner for you. I was like, it's been 20 freaking years, man. It's true. It's true. By the way, I've done 83 interviews today, so I'm really chatty. So, because I'm like stoned, I've been talking so much.
We actually have a question from someone in the audience, and I think it sort of pertains to this. They're sort of curious, how has your acting changed over the course of your career in terms of your technique, what you do?
I think the technique was put on early on. I think it was put on, It was trying other people's techniques, which is okay. It's like a painter trying, copying another painter, and it's like, Josh, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. I think so.
Is it hanging out in the corner and sucking my thumb or whatever I was doing, which is fine for some people. I mean, a perfect example, you haven't seen it yet, but, Joaquin is a wonderful actor, an incredibly gracious actor, and I love him dearly as a person and professionally, and had a ball working with him. But he's a guy, I spent very little time with Joaquin, and that's great. I totally understand that. I have no judgment of it. I don't really respond to it. It just is what it is. And with me, I've found through the years, by having as much space from what I'm doing, like I do a lot of prep. I do a ton of prep. All my work, mostly, I would say 80% of my work is in prep. And I put myself through all the worst situations possible. I do my lines. I almost always know the entire script before I show up for the first day on set, knowing that the lines can change, but it's okay because I can't figure out a character unless I know everything, unless it's right there. And then I start to play with it and all that. But I need objectivity because I get bored doing it the same thing for too long. That's my personality. So, I may be acting, I may be in character, but a totally different character that I've created in order to be the opposite of what I'm doing. So when I finally do what I'm doing, it's totally fresh to me. And that's important for me. Sean Penn is a good example. It's a similar thing with him. Where, like I'm doing Hail Caesar now, and I may walk around talking in that voice sometimes, but just because I'm afraid I'll lose the voice because it's hard on my throat. But, Sean and I both pace a lot. I pace a lot, and he paces a lot. So you have that mark, and then Sean's mark, and then we're doing milk, and we're doing pacing, and then like they'll go ready, okay, rolling, and speed, and I'll come up. And maybe I'll say like, "Whoa, your breath stinks." Action. And he goes like this. He's looking at me like, "Fucker." And then so part of it is like bagging on each other and seeing if we can break the other person. But it also lends, and I understand it sounds goofy and like there's no respect for it. It lends to the amount of focus. There's a lot of selfish things going on that seem collaborative, but it's all lending to the focus. Because to me, the only thing that matters is when you're actually doing it, that you're 1,000%, there's 1,000% conviction. And the minute it's over, I want to release myself from it and go away. And then when I do it. So yeah.
So there's not a lot of stuff going on anymore.
Well, since you brought up Mr. Penn, let's jump to Milk for a second, because I had some questions about that, and actually about the two of you in sort of as actors and working with a director like Gus Van Sant. We spoke a couple weeks ago when you were talking about how Paul Thomas Anderson, that to you, he makes a sense of family on the set as compared to some other directors. And one of the things I was watching some clips from Milk, actually the one you guys saw in here, and in that film, it feels like so much of the tone comes from the performance of the actors. It comes from Sean's performance and many in the ensemble and what you guys are doing. And I'm curious, is that something on that film in particular that Gus sort of gave it over to the No? Gave it over to the actors in a way, like sort of what the tone of the film would be, or did you feel like he had a very steady hand in determining what it would be? I don't know if that question makes a lot of sense.
No, it does. It makes sense, but it's how you're getting that steady hand. You know, if you have a steady, do you have your pulse on the actors, or it's the wrong word, but in manipulating them to do what you want them to do, or are you allowing them to dictate the tone of the film? It's basically what you're saying, right? And Gus, you know, I just went to a Q&A a couple weeks ago, and I saw Gus, who you almost can't see even if you're looking for him, you know, and he's just like, hey, Josh. And I'm like, oh, Gus, what's up, man? He's like, oh, you know, I'm editing right now. And I go, you know, he's so soft-spoken, and he's always that way. But look at the films he's making. You're like, you can't be that guy entirely. So there's something about that works for him. And there's something obviously extremely productive about him. I can't see it, but not that he's lazy, but I don't see the aggression in him that you would normally, you know, I guess pertain to a director who's, you know, productive. So what I'm trying to say is he is manipulating it somehow. And guiding it in a way where he'll come up and say, you know, why don't we, you know, he'll give you notes and all that kind of stuff. But it's not like Paul, when Paul's jumping up and down and doing backflips and then be like, let's do it again. You're like, that was some kind of direction, you don't know, but, you know.
Well, I guess that's sort of pertaining to you and Sean in that film. You know, you've got two characters who are on polar opposites and what their goals are in terms of, you know, Dan White and Harvey Milk as members of the San Francisco County Board of Supervisors. I believe I got it right. And but there's this tension, and in the scenes that you guys are in together, it seems like, I don't know if you guys did a lot of rehearsal beforehand or how you talked about it, but there is this chemistry that's going, and I'm just curious sort of where it came from, whether it was the two of you, that as opposed to Gus guiding it, from what you remember.
No. I remember the chemistry, and Sean and I knew each other before a bit. So, and it was Sean. Matt was supposed to do that part, Damon. And then Matt had to pull out because some kind of scheduling conflict. And then Sean and I had just spent some time in Toronto during the whole No Country thing. And that time that we spent, I don't know, obviously I was fresh on his mind or something. And he said, what about Josh? And Gus liked that idea. But from a chemical point of view, a chemistry point of view, that, yeah, you know, we had that and we have that. But, you know, that doesn't necessarily help all the time. It can get in the way. You know, Joaquin and I have that. We haven't spent any time together. But there was an innate kind of ease about the respect for the work. And then once we went into it, there was something that was already happening. So it was nothing that we needed to establish on a base level. We just went right to a different place. And then went to, you know, wherever we went. I mean, we went so extreme that it was crazy. But, so yeah, there was a similarity there. And I think I'm answering your question. But yeah, there's some actors, I think, you know, to contrast it, there's some actors I've worked with where there's nothing happening. And then you'll create like a fight or something just to have something going on, you know? And then that doesn't help, and then you realize it's just going to be a bad movie, you know?
Have you worked with actors who are friends of yours who you have a great time off set and you're just like, you get on set, it's too much, like buddy, too much chemistry?
No.
That only helps?
No. I haven't worked with a lot of actors that are my friends. I know a lot of actors, but I haven't worked with a lot of actors that, you know, there's that, you know, everybody knows that. You do a movie and it's a family. Right. You're extremely close. I mean, I named my kid after a prop guy's kid that was my best friend, and I never saw him again, you know, and I named my kid after his kid, you know. So that's what happens, you know, it's just what happens. And you may not see somebody for 10 years, and when you see them again, and it's not phony. I know there's that phony thing, hey, how you doing? You know. But then there's the real thing of seeing somebody and you've had an incredibly intimate experience. So it's real when you see them again, and slightly awkward, but real nonetheless.
Well, you were talking earlier about how you spend so much time in prep and researching a role. And I'm just curious, there's some actors who seem to relish doing rehearsals beforehand. They love it if there's 3 weeks before. And then I've spoken to other actors over the years who are like, no, I just want to get to set. I want to save it for then, do it there. Which camp do you fall in?
I like what Duvall says, and he says everything is rehearsal. And I like that. I don't want to put any... I heard somebody who was on the set with me who talked to Joel and Ethan. I'm doing this movie with Joel and Ethan, Hail Caesar, right now, and because they would never tell me that. They go, Josh is really doing a great job. They would never tell me that. But with that, you don't know. I don't know. And they said, that's the point, is they're doing a great job with this pressure, which I don't like that word, because, it's like, you lead in a film, and a studio's, the film, and the millions of dollars, and I don't want to think of all that stuff. That's not my, it is a pressure, but at the same time, I just want to go and treat it as if you're in a black box theater, That's what I did before this movie. I rented out a black box theater, and I had people come down, and I rehearsed with them, and because not because, it's the black box theater, makes me feel like I'm starting over again. But it's just about being in that theater setting. And it's like, let's just do this. Let's not do all the bullshit, and let's just do this. Let's just do the work. Let's just do the lines. Because that's what's great about working, and I know I'm jumping ahead or whatever, but working with Joel and Ethan is because it's just about the work. I mean, it's literally just about the work. I mean, you finish a scene. I just did it. And I used to make jokes about it, but then I'm reminded now, I'll finish a scene. I did a 5.5-page, all-me dialogue scene with the religious community. It's a really funny scene, I think. But they looked at me, and they went, eh. And they walked off. And I was like, well, fuck, man. Like, anything? Like, awesome? Or no? Nothing, man. And that means we got it. You're here to do something that we need for our film. And you just did it.
And is that your experience with the Coens? Is it
Totally. 3 films now. And it's still early in the game. There may be more. But yeah, that's my experience. All joking aside, that's my experience, and I've actually grown to love that experience. Love it. Like, not just appreciate it, like thrive on it. But now, I just worked with somebody who gave me massive compliments, and I had the worst time I've ever had. Oh my God, I love you. You're amazing. You're amazing.
But going back to the Coens, before you had worked with them, I don't know if many people know this, you had gotten in a motorcycle accident. Am I correct? 2 weeks before shooting was supposed to start, and you broke your collarbone, and you still went to set and did not tell them that you were injured. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct.
That's not correct. It's all become a legend now.
No, it's a legend. No, 2 days after I got it, I was doing this thing with Brittany Murphy called The Dead Girl. And I was on my way. I was at a wardrobe fitting. It was 2 days after I got No Country. I was at a wardrobe fitting with Mary Zofries, and I was on a motorcycle. And I asked them, because I had to get a wardrobe fitting for The Dead Girl. So I was going up Highland, and I was in the 3rd lane, and there was traffic, and a lady coming this way was making a left-hand turn, and she just hoped that there was nobody in that lane. She just guessed. And I was right there. And I've ridden motorcycles my whole life. I used to race motorcycles. I did the whole thing. So I never had a problem with it. And I was always a very defensive driver, and you realize it doesn't matter. And there's a skid mark about that long, and I was in the air forever because I hit hard, and I missed. I just got into an angle where I missed the top of the car. So I was flying over the trunk, the boot, and I was flying. I just kept flying. And I was thinking of my kids, and then I was thinking, God, man, I really wanted to work with the Coens. Cool. And then I was trying to get my back around, because I had leathers on, and I had one of those back, the plastic things, right? And I was trying to get my back around, and it wasn't, I had a lot of time to do it, but it wasn't, the trajectory wasn't really helping me. And I landed, and I heard the loudest snap I've ever heard, and I was convinced it was my neck. And I rolled out of it, and I stood up right away, and I felt that rush of blood, and I sat there and I froze, and I was like, what is it? What is it? And I moved like this. And then I looked down at my bike, and I was in traffic, so I tried to pick up my bike, and this arm was just kind of like hanging. So then I realized, and then I moved not to get too, I know it's not, I think it's cool. I moved and I felt the bone moving like that. And then there was a guy on the corner. I started to go into shock. And somebody helped me with my bike. And then I went to talk to the lady. I was like, and I wasn't mad. I was just like, this is not my fault. And there was a big dude who came up to me and he said, hey, man. I said, what? And he said, you need to apologize to this woman. I was like, and then I started going into shock when I was looking at him. And it was like, it started to get like somebody had slipped acid in my drink or something. And I was like, what do you mean, And anyway, so I called, long story short, I went to the doctor and they told me, I would do it differently now because now I know enough about those kinds of injuries where I would have it plated. And the whole thing about having plated, once they cut, then there's the possibility for infection and all this kind of stuff. And you don't want that because then that would obviously be bad. So they said, just let it heal on its own. It will fuse on its own. So I talked to the doctor. My agent called Ethan. I talked to Ethan and I said, it's nothing. It's nothing. And he said, I want to talk to the doctor. And I remember talking to him. I was like, oh. So I called the doctor, and I won't say what the doctor's name is because it was just wrong. And I just said, listen, let's go through this before you talk to him. With my most intimidating voice, So what are you going to say? And he was like, well, I'll tell him, you'll be healed in months. And I was like, okay, first of all, months, completely out of the vocabulary. No months. Days, cool. Weeks, hours, awesome. And he did. He did it. And truly, the only reason I was able to do it is because Llewellyn, early on, gets shot in the right shoulder, and it was my right collarbone. So any kind of weird movement would make sense and that was the only reason, no matter who lied.
Were you in a lot of physical pain, though, during that shoot?
The whole shoot. Do you think that helped your performance? No.
Well, you... I'll let you answer that. Actually, my question was, when you watch the movie now, can you see in certain scenes, oh, wow, that was a day. Like, we shot that, and I remember. You remember the pain more than you remember shooting the scene.
No, not so much that, but I do remember, when Llewellyn's shooting the antelope, he's supposed to be standing up. And I actually, there was a guy there, Keith Walters, one of my good friends now, who was, he knew a sniper, and I called the sniper, I talked to him on the phone, I said, how would you hold your gun? And he said, well, like, what are you wearing and this and that? And he said, take off your boot, put it on the rock, and then just rest your gun on the rock, and then put your hand around the butt of the gun. So that's how I did it. That's how it's in the movie, which looks better anyway than me standing up. And the only thing I can tell is when I reach down and pick up the bullet that I used to shoot the antelope, that Llewellyn used to shoot the antelope, I picked it up and put it in my pocket, but you can see my elbow never leaves usually pick it up like that and put it in your pocket like that. But I put it in my pocket. You can actually see it if you look for it.
Before we get to Inherent Vice, which I do want to spend a good time talking about, but want to talk about W really quickly because there was actually a question from someone in the audience. A difficult role, a movie that came out, right before, almost at the end of his term. Mm-hmm. And my first question for you was, I'd heard that you were hesitant to take it. What finally convinced you, besides Oliver Stone's pestering, to take the role?
I don't, no is a funny thing, and it seems to me that good directors, they know that no isn't necessarily no, or no may be fear, or maybe ignorance or something. And Oliver's really smart. He's just one of the smartest guys I know, and I really like him a lot. I'm very loyal to him. So yeah, he wouldn't leave me alone. I mean, he really pestered me. I used to have a night with guys. It was one girl. It started out with Paul Haggis, and it was a reporter from New York that wanted to interview him and a bunch of his friends. So we had a bunch of guys and the reporter from New York, the woman. And we liked that thing so much that we ended up doing it with a bunch of different women. Like Charlize was one, and Madeline Stowe was one, and we'd have a bunch of guys come in, and then one girl, and it was always the girl who totally took over the dinner. And it was always fun. But anyway, there was one time where I had said no to Oliver, and I talked to him, and I had said no immediately. And then he showed up at that dinner. He wasn't invited, but he showed up at that dinner, and Paul got out of his seat, so he faced me. So he had something going with Paul, which I didn't like, and then he sat down, and then he was pestering me the whole time, and I don't understand, and what is it about it that you don't want to do, and what are you afraid of, and this, and I was like, man, what do you see in me that you see in W? And I had a real strong reaction to W at the time. And I was like, it was creating a complex, and I didn't like it, and I didn't want to see him. I just didn't want to see him. I was like, leave me alone. You know, I love your movies, but leave me alone. And so he kept pestering in a really smart way, you know, and he'd send me a script and say, read this version. Does this make you feel more comfortable? And so it was fear. That's all it was. It wasn't really how I felt about W. It was just a big part. And I was like, I don't know. Yeah.
Once you finally took the role, John Odom would like to know, how did you prepare for it?
John Odom. We know John Odom. Terrifyingly. I did a lot of reading. I read 13 books, I think, on him. I watched his videos. It becomes different. He no longer becomes the guy who I knew. He's just a guy who I have to play now. So I got to know his personal life a lot, which happened, you know, so I was talking to Oliver a lot when I was reading those books. I'd write down a lot of notes. I'd send Oliver a lot of emails that I have a tendency to do that with directors, send a lot of emails. And then he got more into, he created a script that was a real basher, that when I was doing Milk, I said I wasn't going to do that because you could watch CNN and basically get it in 5 minutes, you know. So I said, I'm more interested about how this guy became president twice. What is it about this guy? Because there is. I don't care about the whole ballot thing. Enough people voted for this guy that there's something about him that resonates within people to want to vote for him. What is it that they're lacking now sociologically that wants to, like, you know? It's true, man. You know? And so that was the study, and that was interesting to me, and it impassioned me to want to do it. And then I just sat in a room by myself, being W, for like 4 months, 4.5 months, constantly. I didn't leave my house once to go out the whole time I was doing W. So I did 4.5 months before. No, maybe 3.5 months. And then I was at my house with my assistant and at work, and I never did anything else. And I was always going around, there was one word, like I have something that I do on set now because it's a different voice, but that I would always say America to get into it, which I got made fun of a lot. And I would walk around because I was, you know, that's fear too, again. And I would go, America, 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 America. And then Elizabeth Banks go, America, 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 America. But fear. And I did it with Tommy Lee, same thing, fear.
Well, let's talk about Inherent Vice really quick.
Totally.
Probably a movie where you only had to read one book, I'm guessing. One book to do it. And how did Paul come to you with the role?
He called me. I knew him a little bit through the award circuit during No Country because he had There Will Be Blood. And I really liked him. He was a little unapproachable to me, not because of him, but because he was around Daniel. And that was just like, you know, hey, Paul. And then walk off. And, you know, I was the guy getting in a little bit of trouble, too. So I was kind of, you know, I was the child in the group, you know. Hey, man, we get, wee, wah, you know. And I really had massive respect for him. And I love his movies. I absolutely love his movies. You know, in Magnolia, when the frogs started coming down, I just got it. I loved that there was another guy out there that thought like I thought, you know, and I really mean that. I mean, it wasn't like, you know, I have a peer. It was just like somebody, oh, I'm not a total freak, you know. And so he called me and he said, I may have some work for you. And I had emailed him fairly recently in the last year a few times because I was getting more into directing. I was producing, and I said, can I just ask you out, just to have some coffee and just talk about filmmaking, just as a fan and just as somebody who wants to know more. And then he called me back. I thought for coffee, and he was like, I think I may have some work for you. And I said, But then, the fear, I was leaving to vacation. I said, I'm leaving. Can I see you when I get back? And he said, I actually want to see you right now. I'll send you, or tomorrow morning, is that possible? I'll come down to you. And he sent me the script. I read the script. And you guys will see what I'm talking about. Totally meaningless. I read the script. I had no idea what I read. He came down the next day, but I knew enough to ask him questions. And then his passion just sold me immediately.
And just for those of you who have not read the book, has anyone read the book by the chance? Okay, so Josh plays Detective Bigfoot. I'm going to pronounce the last name wrong. Bjornsson.
Yeah.
Bjornsson. He's an LAPD detective who makes Larry Doxbertello, played by Joaquin Phoenix, life somewhat difficult. And you guys have some great scenes together in the film, which you guys saw in some of the clips there. And I'm curious. We talked about this before, but you were telling me that you, in many ways, Paul, didn't even land on who Bigfoot was until you shot the first scene? Maybe? A little bit?
No. It's a very dense book, and you guys haven't read the book. Nobody has. I hadn't either. I lied once and said that I read Gravity's Rainbow for an interview, and I was like, why did I say that? I want to be smarter than I am. But, I would be like, well, what is this to you, man? And he'd go, I don't know. It can be anything. He'd say shit like that. So I'd be like, what does that mean? And then when we were figuring it, he had kind of, I don't know if this isn't, he hasn't said anything, so maybe it's not, but he had kind of desaturated the part because it's such a colorful era, and the characters, as you know, are so colorful that, bless you, that Bigfoot, he's the antagonist, of course, but he kind of desaturated him. He was like, let's take him out of that color. And he's a pretty colorful character in a different way in the book, but when I got together with him, when I got back from my, trip or whatever, we got together and we started talking about it, and he knew the book verbatim. I could talk about any scene, and he'd go, oh, go to page, 134, it's halfway down on the right side. And I'd be like, wow, man. And so he was extremely intimate with the book, which was really nice. And then I said, what about the scene? Like, why isn't, I remember from the book, there's just more there, selfishly. And then he would go, yeah, let's go. And then we started recolorizing it because I said there's no reason, because he's different. He's not these guys, so it's not competing against these people. He's in the 50s. Don't you think he's more in the 50s? He's not, I know he's in the 60s or the 70s, but he's more right stuff, don't you think? So then we start going back and forth like that. Then we enjoyed saturating or recolorizing it so much that we kind of saturated it more. And then by the time we got on the set, what we would call Tom and Jerry. Like I'd look at him and I'd go, you want Tom and Jerry it? And he'd go, yeah, go ahead. And then it would be way over the top. It would be like, me and Joaquin fighting, or, him trying to climb out of a car at 45 miles an hour. Just anything goes. Tom and Jerry was anything goes. That's not what you see. You see the tamed version.
Well, there's a couple scenes in here I'm not sure that I would still say they're pretty untamed.
They're untamed, but they're not Tom and Jerry.
Well, one of the things that's really interesting about him as a character, too, is he is also an actor. Bigfoot is, and he's trying to be, or an actor at least. And he appears in one great moment that people see in the movie on an episode of Adam 12, which was a cop series. And I'm just curious, I know the audience hasn't seen the movie yet, but do you think he really wants to be a cop, or is he just wants to be a star and thinks like being a cop is his way to somehow being a real actor?
No, yeah, he wants to be a star, not an actor star. He just wants to be a star.
Celebrity of any kind.
Of any kind. Yeah, he just wants to be noticed for the great man that he is. You guys don't get it, but you will. I'm
realizing how hard it is to have this conversation.
It is.
When
it's
people
very
haven't
tough.
seen the
Well,
movie
people
yet.
haven't seen it, but at the same time, it's hard to have the conversation even if they have seen it, and you'll understand that when you see it. He's a guy to me who desperately wants to have an impact, and he's more interested on the impact than he is on the subject that would have the impact, of him being a facilitator of an impactful event. He wants to be, I know people like that. Yeah. I mean, I know people like that. They're like, and they're scary to me. They're scary because they're more, so there's people who they think they should be here, and they're here, and they don't understand why they're not here, and there's this bitter thing. But how Bigfoot deals with it, I mean, you want to speak, so speak.
No, I was just going to
Interrupt
say,
me. I mean,
no, I don't mean to interrupt you, but what you're saying is the reason why, when you first see the movie, I think Joaquin is so intimidated by him because,
Yeah.
obviously Bigfoot, we all think he's really smart when we first meet him, but as the scenes go on, we
He's
realize
not.
he's not.
No.
But there's that first scene, and it's that he's basically saying I'm the shit, like, when he meets him, and that scares Joaquin's character, and as the movie goes along, Doc quickly realizes that maybe someone is a little crazier than he is.
But he's also, but I don't think he's, but because he knows him before that, he's scared. I'm figuring this out with you. I am. Because he's scared, but he is intimidating, and he can be brutal.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's this weird marriage going on between the two of them that, is dysfunctional. It's such an overused word. It's like but anyway, it's dysfunctional. And yet, they need each other. They absolutely need each other. Yet he doesn't have the capacity beyond a certain ceiling. I don't know if he has the intelligence. I wish that he did, but he doesn't.
It's one of the reasons why it's such a great performance and such a great character, because once you see the movie, you can talk about him forever. He's just incredibly fascinating character. And two moments in this movie that I think you'll hear about for a long, long time. There's two scenes in particular that I think actually are going to become internet memes at some point. One involves I believe it's a chocolate banana. Am I correct? And I'm just use your imagination. But I'm curious, was that in the script?
You mean what I did with it?
Yes.
No. No.
We'll let your imagination go well with that.
No.
And then the last one is...
No, it wasn't that bad.
No, it's not that bad. But the other thing is there's this incredible scene at the end of the film. We've been through a lot. Doc's been through this tremendous arc as well, where basically Bigfoot breaks down in many ways. That's how it appears, at least to me, when he comes and visits Doc for the last time.
No, he's lost it. Yeah. Yeah.
And you do something there where you eat something and chomp on some stuff that there was a visceral reaction from the audience when I saw it.
Good.
And I'm just curious, how many times did you actually do that?
A lot. I mean, the banana thing, like there was one day, that banana thing, I know that you're thinking the one, because there's several scenes that I eat bananas, but the one thing.
The one where Joaquin reacts to it.
Yeah, that one. That day, that was at the beginning of a scene that actually only that moment was used of the entire scene. And I eat 2 bananas in that scene, and we ate 44 bananas that day. And that was just one day. So, it sounds like a great idea when you're like, what if I do that? What if I eat the entire banana in this one? And they're like, okay, go for it. And then it's 6 o'clock and you're just like, And going back to the total conviction thing, like every time you ate it, man, it was like the first time, and it looks awesome, and good job, and I'm glad it wasn't a Coen's movie where it was like, did you get the banana thing? It was like, no.
Actually, that's my follow-up then. Is Paul just a direct... I mean, many actors would be like, really? We did this 30 times or 40 times? What about Paul makes you be like, okay, this is cool. Let's keep doing it. Let's keep doing the scene again and again and again.
I would love to work with Fincher to see if that would be a problem. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Honestly, I would. Because I know when, do you got it? I don't know. What does that even mean? Do you have it? Because you don't really know until later, but then you can overdo it, and isn't the third take fine? And I understand what Clint Eastwood does, but I kind of understand what Fincher does too, And I just want to do it. I just want to. It's not what I want to continue doing it because I'm enjoying it. I'm one of the. Not that I differentiate myself from any other actor, but I've heard from actors. The thing I love about acting is between acting and cut. All the other stuff I could just not. I just don't want to deal with. And all that. And I go, that's freaking torture for me. Acting and cut is the worst part of the whole thing. To me, it's like the prep and learning about it and getting into it and finding those shifts and all that. Acting in cut, you don't know if any of it's working. You're just having to use, it's like golfing. You learn, you learn, you learn, you learn, you learn, and if you don't let it go, you're not going to hit the ball correctly. So that act of letting everything go and knowing that you have to do 1,500 things in a scene that you've talked about throughout the day. Don't forget to pick up the fork during that line. Don't forget to do that. Have everything be organic. And also, if you have any other ideas during the scene, go for it. And you're just like, it is a stress. There's nothing you can't take away from somebody that it is a stress. Then you get used to that stress. Then you start to thrive off that stress. And I don't mean torture in a negative way, but it's difficult. You're finding the niches and you don't know it's working. And what's wonderful about working with Paul is he'll tell you, and I go, what do you think? And he goes, it's kind of a turd. And I go, okay, cool. Where do you think we should go? And he goes, what do you think? And I go, what if we cut out the middle 3 pages and I'll try to ad-lib between page 2 and page 6 or 5. And why don't we try that? And look at Joaquin. Joaquin's like, whatever you want to do, I don't care. You know?
Did any of
Just
that...
to mix it up, and then you may go back to the scene in a fresh way because you've mixed it up in a way that makes you have a different perspective on it.
Did any of that actually make it into the film? Any of those moments those sort of improv moments that you guys were sort of playing around?
A lot of them. Behavioral improvisations, not dialogue improvisations. Some of the dialogue did, some of the ad-libs did, but you can't. It's hard to improvise Pynchon. Yeah. It's pretty dense. It's like improvising Joyce.
Well, the movie you're working on now, you're Hail Caesar with the Coens, huge ensemble cast. Is that a movie where you talk about the Coens being sort of not always giving the feedback, say, like someone like Paul would, but you feel like you can have more fun because it's all these great actors coming in. They trust you all. Many of them have been in their films before, so that is there a freer hand in many ways?
First of all, I do have fun, and they do give feedback.
Oh, okay. I apologize.
Oh, no. Yeah. There's just not a lot of compliments going on. It's just not. There's a lack of compliments, but I see them now. They just come out in that way. Like when Ethan got up for No Country and got the best Oscar for Best Picture, when he looked around, you hear one laughter if you watch it on film. I'm the only guy laughing because I'm the only guy who understands. Because when he looked around, and he was terrified, you know, and he was looking around, he was trying to think of what to say, what do you say to that anyway? So it's the most honest moment I've ever seen in the Oscars. And then he finally leaned in, the thing was here, and he goes, thanks. He walked off, and I was like, yeah, that's awesome, you know. What was the speech this year? Thanks. And that's what you get from them. But yeah, working with these, I mean, to go down, you know, there's George Clooney, there's Scarlett Johansson, there's Ralph Fiennes, there's Alison Pill, there's Jonah Hill, Channing Tatum, Tilda Swinton, and there's more people. And basically, like I just did a scene with George the other day I got to slap him around. It was fun. And it was fun. We were both nervous, and we've known each other for a while, but so it's gratifying totally because you're doing different scenes with different people, but it's also nerve-wracking because you don't find, like with Joaquin and I, like after the first day, it was like, oh, we know what this is and we know where we can go. It's that every new person, you know.
Totally makes sense. I have one last question that I want to take actually from the audience, from Heidi, who wanted to know, what has been your most challenging role and why, and how did you tackle it?
My most challenging role. I don't know. They're all challenging. I mean, I don't know if I've been, probably thrashing because of the skateboarding was really hard. No, I mean, Men in Black was maybe the toughest because you don't see a lot of comedians doing Tommy, and there's a reason for that. Like, there's a lot of ways to make fun of Tommy, but you don't see anybody doing it. And it's a cadence that's really tough to get, much tougher than W, that drove me insane. I went down to Mexico, and I literally went a little insane, and I almost called Barry. I think I did at one point and said, this is a mistake. I can't. I don't think I can do this. I would start with, it sounds so dramatic, but it's not, syllables, and then I'd get a word, and then I'd do that word over and over and over, and then I'd maybe get half a sentence, and then I'd go the next morning, and I wouldn't be able to do it again. Because so I watched Men in Black, and I'm not kidding, at least 35, 40 times. And that's all I did, because I started to get so scared that I wasn't going to get it. And then once it happened, and then I was able to, because it's not just learning it. That's why I don't really work with a voice coach. I do sometimes, but it's not a technical thing for me, or it is, but I have to feel it. There has to be a cellular thing that happens where then it just clicks. So then it's not like, how do I say this word? I already know how to say every word, but I have to work for that shift. And so then when I did it, I did the first scene with Will, and then Barry, who's insane, came from around the camera, and he was like crying, really crying hard, like harder than he should have been crying.
Tears of laughter.
No, just a lot of tears.
Oh, no.
And he was like, it wasn't like, I'm not sure if it was laughter or sadness or what, but it was a weird, weepy kind of in between. And then Will started laughing hysterically. And then I was sitting there not knowing what the fuck was going on. Like if it was a successful thing, because I had just did my first scene. And he was like, "You're amazing. And we did it. We did it." And I was like, we have a whole movie to go. And then I realized that was a thing. Like he cried probably 400 or 500 times after that. But well, that's a true story, man. It's absolutely a true story.
Last but not least, did you get the seal of approval from Tommy himself?
I didn't. I didn't. I've seen Tommy after that. How you doing? Whatever. No. He never said anything. The best compliment I got though, and is, once in a while, especially after the Coens, a compliment's always nice. But his assistant thought that he had dubbed his voice. That was the greatest compliment I got.
Well, there we go. By the way, that was a great way to finish that, because we just finished with Tommy being heavy bed. Anyway, guys, please thank Mr. Josh Brolin.
Thank you guys.